Harvest Moon games have been around since the Super Nintendo era, but these days when you say those words, there's often one that comes to people's minds. A celebration of the farm life genre, a one-man labour of love so wholesome and well-crafted it's convinced actual, real people to leave their 9-to-5 office jobs and move to the countryside to buy a farm. That game is called Stardew Valley. The experience of playing Stardew is very relaxing and cozy. You essentially live out the dream of a simple country life, expand your farm, maybe get married, become a hoppy IPA tycoon or a mayonnaise magnate, but the whole thing is backed by this fantastic sense of progression. You start off only growing a few parsnips, but as soon as you make a little bit of money to go to the general store, and with the change of each season, there's a huge selection of new crops and processes with which you can expand your farm and make any number of artisan goods. Even the basic farming gameplay loop is always evolving and striving to push you on to the next thing, but it never loses that charming simplicity or gets too overwhelming. Now, really one of Stardew Valley's biggest achievements is its ability to balance sandbox and story. Each of the activities or characters you meet around Pelican Town will have elements that either prompt your imagination or tell a deeper story if you choose to follow it. But most of these events aren't time sensitive, and you can happily just go about tending your farm if you prefer. Though I would consider that missing some of the most special and heartwarming parts of the game. None of these stories feel like substrates of a main arc, but the way they intertwine with each other pushes the constant feeling of discovery and brings life into the world. It feels almost real, which is incredibly high praise for any game, let alone an indie title developed by one dude. And, of course, farming is just one part of the game. There's also mining, foraging, crafting, buying new buildings, the blacksmith, completing the community centre bundles, romancing, and, my personal favourite, fishing. Seriously, I don't know what's so addictive about this particular minigame. It's deceptively simple, and where this probably would have been acceptable, there's a pretty in-depth and skill-based system. There's different rods, bait, and a variety of tackle to give you different buffs. Not to mention the literal metric ton of fish that cycle with the seasons, all with different difficulty profiles and only being able to be caught in certain locations. The first time I really got into this game, I played with a friend on his world, and I let him do everything else while I just tried every single fishing location, and for several hours I got lost in the wiki, figuring out how to catch all the legendary fish. Next, we get to the game's visuals. Sprite animations are simple but crisp, and the sheer amount of detail crammed into the world is just incredible. The bright, saturated colour palette and timeless retro vibe might give off the impression of simplicity, but if you look closer you'll realise that every piece of the world has been thoughtfully designed to turn that atmosphere up to 11. Let me remind you again that this was all a one-man operation, and the thing is, it would be really easy for there to be some small holes or rough edges, and people would forgive them and still love the game. But there's never been any excuses, just this incredible quality throughout. Bugs and community suggestions like making Shane an eligible bachelor in the game's romance system are actually taken to heart by the developer and improve the game as time goes on. And it's quickly becoming apparent that in the era of disastrous releases, indie studios are really the last bastion in this respect. And then we get on to the music. I spend a lot of time in my videos going on about thematic consistency in soundtracks and why I think it's important. This is something that Stardew Valley gets exactly right. The entire world is enveloped in the most cozy and relaxed music possible. The thematic consistency between the tracks leads into that feeling of an alive world that I was talking about earlier. Spring is filled with the crescendo and the building excitement for new life and beginnings. Summer is laid back, cheerful and warm. And winter includes horns and high cut-off synthesizers that, to me, perfectly represent the tone qualities of cold and ice. When you go into the saloon, someone is playing a folk vamp on a slightly out-of-tune bar piano and glasses are clinking in the background. While you're playing the game, you don't really notice these details. They're just absorbed by your subconscious as making perfect sense with the situation around you, but that's a common feature of many criminally underrated soundtracks. In a world where gamers are being constantly set up for disappointment by overpromising trailers and rushed products, Stardew Valley brings a modern touch to that perfect escapism that made playing video games so special to me as a child. That sense of excitement and adventure that I had playing Pokemon Soul Silver for the first time at age 7. And the trade-off I often face, which is whether to play these great indie games or to play something multiplayer with my friends, well, here I can have the best of both worlds. It's a game that is both huge and polished, broad and deep, complex but also with a beautiful simplicity, all made by a guy who didn't really know what he was doing when he started. It's a testament to what's possible when you really care about what you're creating, and how you can positively affect so many people's lives in the process.